Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, one of your co-hosts here in the basement of solitude as we get ready to talk more Blue Velvet, Criterion Velvet Part 2, and I'm here with my favorite co-host, everybody's favorite co-host, the pinball wizard herself,
Oh, Charles.
and Stranger Things marathon binge watcher, Xan
Yes.
Sprouse. Hi, Xan. How are you?
Hello, Charles. Yes,
How
today
you
we are
doing?
recording this on the 4th of July at 7:27 p.m. And Diane, it is the 4th of July.
Forecast seems rain, or is calling for rain.
Calling for rain.
Yeah,
Damn good pie. No, yeah. Diane, it is the 4th of July at 7:27 p.m. and I have already been done with season 3 of Stranger Things since 3:30 p.m. today.
and I am so jealous. I've only watched one episode of Stranger Things, and I saw
So,
Zan's post online, and I'm going, no, like,
yeah. So I've had a
so,
couple of people say to me, "Are you?" Because I posted on Facebook, "Who else is done?" Because I want to talk about it with somebody.
yeah. And I was
And
like, it's not a race.
it's not that it's a race; it's that I got up early and I had to start it.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of those. I had a couple. Are you? Yeah, we haven't even started. You're done yet? It's like
What?
seriously. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon when I finished it. So
I had to respect the dedication. I do.
yeah, it
And
was that was pretty crazy. But yeah, it was. So yeah, I'm done with Stranger Things, and I highly recommend it. So
that's good to know because I still have more. What, 7 episodes more to go?
you got about 6 hours
Or
and 15 minutes left that you have to do.
I guess I'll just have to suffer somehow. All right,
Well, you're
but
off
yeah,
tomorrow.
I was,
You can
I,
finish this tonight.
exactly. I'll be off tomorrow, so we'll probably finish up. But yeah, here I
Yeah.
am. I'm over at my parents' with my wife Lori, and we're kind of sitting around watching a movie, and I'm going, I could be watching Stranger Things right now, and
Mom, Dad, this is
yeah,
fun,
yeah,
but
yeah,
can we flip over to Netflix, please? That would
yeah.
be great.
Why don't you guys just take a nap so Lori and I can watch Stranger Things? That is that
Yeah,
cool?
I was over at my parents' house, I think, the day or that night that The Gauntlet
Yeah,
dropped
right.
on
Mr. Science
Netflix,
Theater, yeah.
the MST3, The Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet.
And
Yeah,
and
you gotta do the Felicia Day move
you
with
got to
that.
do The Gauntlet.
Yeah.
And so then we're starting to get tired. I'm like, can I turn on Netflix? So I'm like, I'm still here. I might as well just watch it while I'm
Right.
here. So
Yep.
yeah, I get that.
All
I get
right.
it.
All right. But so yeah, we're gonna talk more Blue Velvet. Obviously, we didn't get to finish everything because there's just so darn much on this Criterion Collection.
Blu-rays are amazing.
Yep. And so yeah, we're gonna talk more of the classic 1986 neo-noir mystery film written and directed by David Lynch. And last time we talked, we went through all the new spiffy deleted scenes that everybody thought were gone forever. Guess what? They weren't.
You have a future in comedy.
Exactly. So yeah, you I love that line. That was one
Mm.
of the best lines. And
Because she did. That's the greatest thing. It's
that's
Megan
just
Mullally.
that's right. Exactly. Yeah, Jeffrey's girlfriend from college.
Yep. Who
Uh,
wants to get it on? I'm naked.
Not many people doing a Megan Mullally impression, so points
That's my
there.
favorite thing that she's ever done is where she's Tammy 2 on Parks and Recreation. Just totally full on naked in the library,
Nice.
screaming. And what's funny is that the only thing that bothers the people in the library is that she's yelling.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just fine with with her going insane.
All right. So, and like I said, we've already talked about this episode, or at least we talked about the movie when we in episode 32 way back on April 12th of 2018. So,
Yeah.
if you want us to run down the movie, just go back and you can listen to that podcast because we're kind of sneaky that way, and then you could listen to
Yeah, movie still.
part one if you want to hear us go through talk about the deleted scenes. And now we might as well talk about, what do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the booklet? Do you want to talk about the Velvet Revisited, the Peter Bratz, what does he call it? That imagining, or what is it? What's that phrase that they use for that? Do you remember?
Don't remember what that
It's no
is.
big deal. It's no big deal. He
Yeah.
uses some fancy schmancy like
Yep, and it's not in the booklet.
terminology for it, but basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, a meditation. That's it.
Meditation. Yes, that's
Yes.
right.
So, which is basically, to boil it down into its essentials, it's Super 8 footage and some photos with some music accompanying it. That's the meditation.
I think we should start with that because I thought that was very original and I absolutely loved it.
All right, let's talk about that first then.
So
Okay.
basically, what this is this German director wanting to Peter Bratz wanting to essentially document the process of making Blue Velvet. And at the beginning of it's almost like a David Lynch short film about David Lynch because
Yeah.
it's very David Lynchy the way
Yes.
it's done. And
A bit
at the very
surreal.
beginning-
A bit surreal.
It's a bit surreal, yeah. At the very beginning of it, he has some excerpts of letters that go back and forth between him and David Lynch about
The
him
correspondence.
saying he
Yeah.
wants to do it, and then David Lynch saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this." Oh, and bring some money because he
I
has
thought that-
no budget
Yeah,
whatsoever.
I thought that was rather funny.
I thought that was
and then it
great,
shows a good bit of Lynch's self-deprecation and humor about it.
Yeah, and Lynch's sense of humor for sure. Um, but I thought this was a fantastic way to show behind the scenes stuff without being tedious
Hmm.
or without being too technical or without being too pieced together. So it's Super 8 home movies essentially
Right.
and music or David Lynch or Kyle MacLachlan or somebody talking over the footage because he did some interviews.
Yeah, there's some linking narration with that.
Yeah, there's some linking narration with that, and some of it's very, very interesting too because it's you learn some just silly things that went on with the cast and crew, and some interesting possible inspirations for things that I thought were cool.
Right.
And just some interesting stuff. Like there's the scenes where Sandy is on the phone with Jeffrey, and you hear Laura Dern doing her part, but
David Lynch
doing the Jeffrey part.
Yeah, he's on the other end. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so if you're interested in production, I think it's interesting to see that sort of stuff from a theatrical standpoint, not so much from a what camera are you using and what kind of rigs are these, that sort of thing. But there are some things that I want to sort of just talk about really quickly.
Yeah.
Just some little silly things like how Kyle MacLachlan's saying they're going to start a band called No Frank, which I thought was, where's that? I want to go to that.
Yeah, I actually wrote down the actual chronology of everything that's in here because I was that nerdy about it.
Great. If you want to do that,
so do you want to do it chronologically, or you just want to talk about random stuff? Because I'm good either way. I don't have to talk about.
Let's just do each point.
All right,
Yeah.
all right. So we already talked about the correspondence between Bratz and Lynch, or Bratz and Lynch. Excuse me. Next thing we had was like this. We see Lynch discussing a scene with Laura Dern. I can't remember the exact scene though. I just wrote. And then we saw some footage of parking spots, which I thought were kind of interesting because did you notice who one of the parking spots was for?
I didn't.
Okay, it's a motorcycle parking spot for Stephen King.
That's interesting.
Yes, and it's right next to, and then they showed Lynch's parking spot, and they've got a sign up that says for Devoid Lynch.
That's awesome.
Instead of David Lynch, Devoid.
No, I did not see. I saw the Devoid, but I didn't see the Stephen King.
Yeah, it's right before that. So,
fascinating.
Yeah, so apparently Stephen King was on the set.
Okay.
Hanging out, presumably.
Okay.
So, yeah, I thought that was a really interesting tidbit.
That is very interesting.
Unless it's just another Stephen King, but seems.
I don't know.
I know. Well, we know that. Let's see. I know that Stephen King rides a motorcycle.
Yeah, that's true.
So. Yeah, but we don't actually get to see Stephen King.
No, we don't see Stephen King.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting, isn't it?
That's very
Stephen
very...
King and David Lynch seemed like they would be like to hang out together.
Yeah.
Back
I
in
think
the
that's
80s.
adorable.
Again, this is 85, so
Yeah, exactly.
so like Stephen King's like pretty much at the pinnacle of his career at this point. And after like,
Yeah.
as his novel career, not so much the
I don't think he
movies.
can get more famous
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, he was obviously a famous novelist after Cujo, Christine, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Oh
um,
yeah. Mhm.
so I thought, yeah, you might want to go check that out. Then we have footage of Lynch putting the Lumberton lettering on an ice truck with white masking tape on black.
And it just shows you how this movie had zero money.
Right.
Because one of the things they wind up talking about in a couple of the different parts of documentary footage on this Blu-ray
Hmm.
is that Dino De Laurentiis did not want to spend what was it, $10 million, $20 million, something like that,
Right.
for Blue Velvet, which is nothing for movies these days. And he said to David Lynch, he said, cut your salary and cut the budget, and we can do it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm curious as to see what kind of cuts he made, but apparently it's director makes lettering out of white masking tape cuts.
Well, it was also, wasn't there the deal that, if you do this for like
I thought that was pretty cool.
low budget, then you can have more creative control over the project. I won't need to
And it
supervise
worked.
it. Yeah.
That's the thing, is that David Lynch has made, probably millions and millions of dollars on this in, video sales and theater sales. He got his his second Oscar nomination for this movie.
Right. And he's probably thinking after Dune that, well, if as long as you're not spending millions of dollars on this, I don't have to babysit you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like I said, second Oscar nomination. I mean, David Lynch definitely made the right call.
Yeah, I'd say so. But yeah, it's kind of cool, and it just shows how hands-on. Once again, we've talked about this on Twin Peaks, but and other films. But that he does it himself. He doesn't just have somebody else do it for him.
David Lynch really wants to be part of the process,
and he has
all of the
and he knows what he wants. And he's probably thinking to himself, well, yeah, I can just give me some masking tape. I can make the lettering, and we don't have to send off and have it printed or whatever and spend
We don't have
money.
to call a graphic designer. We don't have to call somebody,
I'll make
an
this
automotive
work.
painter or car decaler or something. We don't have to do any of that. I'll just give you some tape, and he does a great job.
Exactly. So see, it can be done.
It can be done.
It can be done. Next thing, you talked about this, that Kyle MacLachlan was talking about having the band No Frank someday.
No Frank, yes.
Yeah. Which I had to think came up at some point after meeting what's his face? I'm blanking on the name. I can't believe it. Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper,
Yes.
right.
Yeah. Let's see. Next scene was Lynch talking about his health during the second week of filming.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he can hardly wait to get into the car and drive to the shoot.
And he started talking about how Eraserhead was a similar thing, but he already lived there. And on Eraserhead, he sort of rented the space, and there was a room that he said it was completely black, and when you went in, the lights were all out, and it was total darkness, and he could just immerse himself in that world of Eraserhead.
Right.
So,
but
it just is another thing that shows you how personal and how invested David Lynch was in the Blue Velvet Project.
I just think it's interesting he's talking about his health. It's like, well, why would you be so concerned about his health? Unless it's just brats going, well, how are you feeling right now?
It could be that, or it could be that there had, Dune took a lot out of him.
Yeah, true.
It was a big production. There were a lot of factors.
This is essentially his rebound movie from Dune.
Yeah, it took a lot out of him.
Yeah. This time, and he also says that he thinks the film is about things people have going on inside them. And he makes this comment, so many strange things beneath an appearance.
I know. And that's a perfect
very
way
Lynchian.
to describe a small town also.
Right.
It looks one way, but it's partially that.
Yeah.
Some of it is that. It's not that that's not true. It's just that that's not the whole story with a small town.
And again, it's essentially why Blue Velvet is the prototype for Twin Peaks.
100%.
Yeah. And probably, probably while making Blue Velvet, Lynch got a bunch of ideas that he figured, well, I can't put these in the film, so I'm going to make a little notebook, and
Hmm.
maybe at some point I can do something with these.
Right, right,
But
exactly.
all right. Next scene, we get filming from Jeffrey's father having his heart attack while watering the lawn.
And this I thought was interesting, the sort of behind the scenes footage of how they had done that, and because it's so familiar, especially when he's in the hospital.
Right.
And we don't see a lot of Jeffrey's father in the hospital, so you see a little bit more of that.
Yes.
And I thought, when I saw that, I thought this is an interesting way of doing this. I thought this was it was a captivating way
Yeah.
of doing behind the scenes
And
footage.
it's just cool to see, like these iconic scenes to kind of see them from a different perspective.
Right,
Because Bratz
right.
obviously isn't looking through the standard filmmaker's Lynch's lens. He's looking through his own lens off to the side or
No,
whatever. And so it kind of brings a fresh perspective, I think, to the material.
right. His point of view is just off to the side of David
Yeah.
Lynch's point of view, but
Right. Right.
uh,
So that had to be weird.
still
Like,
there.
okay, I'm filming while you're filming, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Next thing we have is Lynch talking about the idea for the ear in the field.
Yes,
Mr. Ear.
Mr. Ear.
And he says if the ear was found by another person, it would lead him to another world and have an experience that would change many things. Uh-oh.
As it does, for sure.
Zan kind of froze up there a little bit.
The Skype seems glitchy.
Uh-oh.
The
No,
Skype seems glitchy.
all I said was that's exactly what happened for Jeffrey.
Yes.
So,
I love that. I love that audio clip now. If you
Paul
couldn't tell,
Gibbons is the greatest. He's the greatest, and I love him. And I always will.
I have to restrain myself from using it because I don't want to use it too much. But
He
I
might
just
be
love it.
inappropriate, but at least nobody else is with him when he was doing it.
Exactly. But anyway, yeah. If you watch What We Do in the Shadows, you're familiar with that audio clip.
Hmm. And if you're not watching What We Do in the Shadows,
What
do it.
what is wrong with
After
you?
Stranger Things,
Yeah,
go find What We
yeah.
Do in the Shadows.
Binge watch Stranger Things Part 3, and then go and watch What We Do in the Shadows if you haven't already, or even if you have, because it's worth watching again.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes, it's definitely worth it.
So next is the filming of the ear in the field, and footage of Lynch and MacLachlan practicing the throwing of rocks.
Yes. Yes, there's just a little hut in the field, and they're just trying to aim for it.
Which is kind of fun, like, because if you remember Jeffrey, like he's walking around that field and he just kind of like, for a moment there, he kind of stops and plays with throwing rocks in it.
And now that we've seen the deleted scenes and we know that Jeffrey is home for probably good,
Right.
unless some miracle of financial windfall happens, and he's probably not going back to college, and he's probably bored and listless and angry, that just walking around town having no idea what to do and throwing rocks makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I like to think that Jeffrey, he's gone through that field hundreds of times as a kid,
Hmm.
and that's just like a ritual of his. Every time he goes to the field, he throws some rocks.
Yeah, probably.
That would be my guess. Because that's the
Yeah,
kind
that's
of thing
probably
you did
exactly
in a
what's going
small
on.
town when you were bored out of your mind.
And that's probably just what he's
Trust me on this.
he's an adult now.
I know from personal experience on this.
You know how this works.
Exactly.
He's an adult now, but he still only knows how to interact with this town as a kid.
Right.
So,
See, for me, you read comic books, you watch Doctor Who, and then you go outside and throw some rocks. That's it.
well,
There you go.
now kids today have the internet, so they got lucky.
Yeah. See, all we had were rocks, and we played with like sticks, and then
Rocks and Mad Magazine, God rest its soul.
yep. R.I.P. Mad Magazine.
I don't even want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Too sad.
Yeah. But yep. Let's see. Lynch talks about using computers in film. In the
This
next
was fantastic.
Yeah, and he seems very prescient here, like very ahead of his time.
Very ahead of his time, because everything he's describing are things you can do in film now.
Right. Again, this is 1985 when this is
Mhm.
filmed. So he's talking about George Lucas having money to use them, and he says if computers were used to make filming go faster, it would be incredible.
And that's the thing. He's not talking about the George Lucas type of computer innovation
Yeah.
when it comes to movie making itself with, like what is it called? The Dykstra rig,
Oh yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
John Dykstra started the process of moving the camera around the prop rather than the prop around the camera.
Right.
Um, any sort of computer animation, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
some of the things that Henson was doing at the time, which was automating props, the computer mechanization of Muppets and other types of puppetry. But just David Lynch was talking about the practical side of filmmaking, about how you can push a button and your lights turn on, and then it's wrong, and then you push another button and your lights are on. And that's how film is done now. Everything is rigged through a system, and you have a board, and lighting is done from a control panel rather than from get a bunch of guys and move the rig 5 inches around, because everything's a closed system within itself, and you have to move it manually. So yeah, a lot of the things he talked about wanting are things that we can do now in film, which I thought was,
Yeah.
I was happy for David Lynch when I thought about that. I was like, "Aw,
Yeah.
we have these things for you now, David."
It just shows what kind of visionary he is, that he was already thinking ahead like that before it became like the industry standard.
Right, and just thinking about what computers can do.
Yeah.
Just for your practical daily, everyday thing.
Now for Lynch, it seems like he is more the visual. He's not so bogged down in the technical, and I think this is why he's thinking, well, if anything we can do to speed this up, I'm all for it, because it takes way too long.
Right.
I just want to get the shots
Lynch
I want.
Even says in this, right. He even says in this, I never started out trying to be a filmmaker. I'm a painter.
Right.
He's the visual. He's a painter, not a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that he's not a lover of the tech. I don't think he's not a techie. He's not a gadget guy. He just wants a way to make it happen.
Yeah. He says that he'd love to be able to do this, but he says it would take a lot of money to research and get the bugs out. So he wants basically somebody else to figure this out for him.
He wants to use it. He doesn't want to innovate it.
Yeah, exactly. He says you need to use state-of-the-art tech, or it won't look right, and you won't have control. So he's a big proponent of like using whatever it takes to get the shot that you want.
Do it right the first time.
Yeah. And he's obviously like, he's not one of those like, well, you have to use X camera from 10 years ago to get this look. He's just more like, okay, whatever you've got, that's the best technology to get what you want. Use it.
Right.
And he also makes this really interesting remark. He says Francis Ford Coppola, the guy who directed The Godfather, that guy. He says he wants to be able to think his film and have it appear on screen. So I'm thinking, what conversations are these guys having behind the scenes that we don't know
Seriously, right?
We're like, how did that come up over dinner?
Yeah, I know, right?
Like, yeah, I want to be able to think my movie into existence.
And that...
But I found that fascinating.
That would be the easiest way of... Because you have the visual, but then you have to have the technical knowledge to make the visual look exactly like you want it in your brain.
Right.
And sometimes you don't always have even the words for it, let alone the knowledge and the expertise for it.
Yeah.
So.
But, yeah, it was pretty cool. Next thing is Lynch and MacLachlan running through the chicken walk scene with Laura Dern.
I thought that was adorable.
Him practicing the chicken walk.
I was like, look, it's the chicken walk. That was awesome.
That was a funny scene. Then next, Lynch talks about being disappointed that a hurricane that was apparently supposed to happen never happened.
Yeah, he's pretty disappointed that there was no major.
No
hurricane.
Like I was wanting all kinds of destruction. It didn't
I
happen.
wanted this hurricane to come through.
You suck, hurricane.
You suck, hurricane.
Yeah, and he says the shoot's about halfway done at this point when he's making this comment. He says he feels like he's in Lumberton and it's going, whatever the filming is going all the way it's supposed to. So he seems pretty confident about it. He
And I
says,
think this is where we're seeing some shots of around town.
right.
And there was something that I thought was pretty interesting, and it has to be an inspiration for something in Twin Peaks.
Probably.
And we see a thing called Big Dave's Spud Farm.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And I looked at that and I was like,
like
that's
Big
where Big Ed's gas farm came from, I guarantee you.
Probably.
So, yeah,
You know what? I never made that connection. You're absolutely right. I gotta think you're right on that one.
I mean, come on.
I'm gonna mark one up for Zan there on that one.
Just slide one over for me.
Yep. Shunk. Yep.
You know?
Points for Zan on that one.
I just thought I was like, what? Big Dave's Spud Farm?
Yep.
I've heard of a place like that.
I should have made that connection. You're absolutely right. But he does make also a reference that Lumberton is a great name because it puts a picture in your mind.
It does. It this is a logging town.
Right, Lumberton.
You know what this town looks like.
Yep. So yeah, you can just say the name Lumberton. You can picture. Okay, it's got to be some kind of logging town, like you said.
The logging town. It's a small town. It's not a big metropolitan area because it's still surrounded by trees.
Right.
So.
Next scene, he talks about painting and going to Philadelphia, the perfect place for him to go.
It's Gordon. It's Gordon Cole. Yes, when he went to art school in Philadelphia after.
Now the question is, did he talk about Judy? Because we're not going to.
No, we didn't talk about Judy.
We're not going to talk about Judy. We're going to leave her out of it.
Yeah, we're leaving her out of it.
Yeah. But next after that is filming at the high school when Jeffrey pulls up in the convertible.
I just remember thinking, like, if David Lynch had been filming at my high school, my head would have exploded.
Right.
I would have lost my mind. I would have gotten kicked out of school because all I would have done was cut class and, like, hide in David Lynch's production somewhere.
And everybody else would have gone, who's David Lynch?
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I like to think I would have had a crush on Kyle MacLachlan from when he was Paul Atreides.
Would have? Oh, well, yeah. Yeah.
I would have been like, guys, Paul Atreides is here.
Who?
Cover me in math class because I'm going to go watch him play.
Who? Was he in Ghostbusters? No.
No, he was in Dune. He was hot. What are you talking about? What's the matter with you?
That's hilarious.
That movie with that bald guy from Excalibur and Duncan Idaho from Logan's Run.
Right. And Al from Quantum Leap, but that hasn't existed yet. I don't know.
There's a child actor that's found.
Right.
Velvet?
Excuse me. Next is a conversation with Alan Speight, the sound designer. I didn't get much of what he was talking about, but, you know.
Well, they were talking about how...
if you remember it, that's awesome.
Yeah, he was talking about how he and David Lynch sort of talked about what they want, basically, the town to sound like and how they want the sounds to be and what type sounds we're thinking of and what sorts of... The soundscape, basically. Just how to, you know... Right. What the idea of the soundscape is, and then from there he can find things to make it work.
Okay.
So,
and then that kind of bleeds into some footage of Isabella Rossellini singing as Dorothy.
I thought that was so cool to see her being Dorothy, but without the wig.
Right.
Because the wig, Isabella Rossellini has pretty much had the same hair since she started in movies. You know, she has that short, very simple hair.
Yeah. It's
the same hair she had in White Nights.
Right.
And White Nights was like the year before that she made Blue Velvet. Like White Nights was released, you know, the beginning of 1985. So when you see Blue Velvet, thanks to all the makeup and you know, Isabella Rossellini was a model, but, you know, there's model makeup and then there's singer at the Slow Club makeup.
Right.
So we're not used to seeing her in that sort of
lounge singer. Yeah.
Lounge singer siren type makeup.
Right.
and that wig is so different for her. You never see her with that much hair, so that's a
Right.
very
Yeah,
much
well, and and she's got big '80s hair for the time
right,
period.
right. It's a
The
wig.
wig, yeah,
Her
exactly.
even in the confines of the story, she takes the wig off
Right.
in her apartment. So the wig makes her really very much a character.
Yes.
And you really are able to kind of forget that she's Isabella Rossellini. But in this footage, you see Isabella Rossellini doing Dorothy, but without the wig. So she almost looks like her character in White Knights doing a Dorothy Vallens impression. It's really bizarre.
Right.
Which I thought that was really, really cool to see. And we find out that she was not exactly the first choice for Dorothy Vallens.
Yeah, that's one of the things that probably we'll talk about. I've got that somewhere.
That might not be in this. It all started to bleed together. So,
Yeah,
and your notes are better than mine. I take
I'm trying to figure out. Like, I thought I had something, but if you know it, go ahead. If you want to talk about it.
Oh, we can talk about when we get, because I think it's
Okay.
I think it's in the interviews.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's it.
I don't think it's in this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's it then. Let's see. Anyway, let's see here. That next is Kyle MacLachlan's stand-in, which was like, there wasn't that much to it.
Mm-hmm.
Next was audio of Lynch as the person on the other end of the phone call that you talked
Which
about
I loved.
earlier.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, because it's the scene where Sandy calls the station for her father. Where she goes, "Find him!
Find him!"
Yeah,
And
that
did you
scene.
catch the little clipping of the personal ad when they start talking about the Sandy character and the Jeffrey character together?
No.
There was a little clip, just a little snippet that was just a quick shot on the screen of Jeffrey, and it says it's a personal ad that says, "In search of Jeffrey," something like I still love you," or something like that, and then it's Sandy. It's like a Desperately Seeking Susan type of a
That's cool.
personal ad.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering if that was something the director found and put that in later because it just happened to be the two names, or if it was something David Lynch found and that's where the names came from. They don't talk about it. It's just a little throwaway image that gets thrown up on the screen, but they don't discuss it at all. And so I had a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that both you and I got something different. Like I got certain things out of this, and you got certain things out of this.
This was a really, really interesting, in-depth format that
Right.
usually when you see behind-the-scenes footage, it's just sort of put together and it's kind of tedious. But this made it very, very interesting with putting Lynch's comments about filmmaking and the actors' comments about what they were doing over this behind-the-scenes footage.
Yeah.
So
next was the rehearsal of the scene where Dorothy comes out naked in front of Jeffrey's house.
That was so weird because it was daytime.
And she's wearing clothes.
Yeah, she's wearing clothes, but just the fact that it's daytime.
Yeah. And
that sort of reminded me of the movie Clerks.
Right.
There's a Soul Asylum song in that. And
Not Runaway
Soul
Train.
Huh?
Not Runaway Train.
No, it's I can't remember the name of it. It's the one that plays over the end credits.
Okay. I can't remember that either.
Yeah, I forget the name of it. But anyway, Soul Asylum did a video for it, and it was the actors from Clerks and Soul Asylum playing each other in hockey up on the roof.
Okay.
Just like they do in Clerks. And it's so weird because it's in color.
Right.
Just
and
those
Clerks being in black and white, yeah.
Clerks in black and white. Those characters in color was just very, very strange. And I think this was that sort of same feeling. It was something I knew what it was.
Right.
The fact that it was daytime just made it very, very strange.
Well, and it's even more interesting because if you remember from in part one when we talked about that this scene was what essentially got them banned by Wilmington, the city of Wilmington, from doing anything more, any more local filming, or at least
right.
And or at least on the streets of Wilmington.
I just have a feeling that there were a bunch of people who were upset about this scene, and then there were a bunch of guys going, I don't see what's wrong with this movie.
Yeah, well, remember they were talking about that there was a bunch of people just like they warned them before, and they still kind
Yeah.
of hung out there in their chairs watching the scene.
Like, look, she's going to be full on naked out here.
So
Okay.
probably someone just like,
Yeah.
was there and then they made a call, or they talked to somebody about it and they made a call to somebody at the
have this
city
image
council.
of this like really uptight,
Yeah,
Tipper Gore type of
Right.
woman, all
Yes.
upset about it, and the husband trying to talk her down, saying, honey, I think he's making an art film
Oh,
here.
old PMRC Tipper Gore. Yes, there's a blast from the past.
Yes, PMR Tipper Gore. Yeah, that's the thing. I have nothing against Al Gore as a politician, but growing up in the 1980s,
Right.
Tipper Gore,
His wife is horrible.
was my nemesis.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
When you are trying to buy records when you're 10 years old and you got that bitch telling parents that you shouldn't buy Prince albums,
Right.
I hate her.
Yeah.
Hate her so much.
Yep.
You know what parents should do? Be involved in their kids' damn lives, and so they can hear the records themselves.
Yeah. Well, I was listening, obviously in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, I was listening to college alternative radio stations.
That's
And
the thing. You were in high school.
Yeah.
I was still a kid.
Yeah.
So, that felt like a personal attack to me.
Right.
And you can say what you want to about him, and you can hate on him all you want, but his testimony to Congress combined with his Christmas album with the Muppets means I will love John Denver. So,
how can you not
anyway,
love John Denver?
yeah, but I could just picture some husband going, "Oh, honey, I don't think this is that bad. I think we should maybe see what he's going for here."
Yeah, exactly. Now, and then you want to come back and, let's go find a hotel room somewhere.
Hey, is that that Russian model still here? Oh wait, she's Italian for real? She's not really Russian? Okay.
Hilarious.
She's whose daughter? What? Yeah, Isabella Rossellini, by the way, I don't know if we've discussed this, is Ingrid Bergman's daughter.
Right. Yes.
So.
As an Ingrid Bergman from Casablanca and
Casablanca,
many other
Gaslight, and
obviously very legendary, and looks a lot like her mother.
Looks a lot like her mother, but with like even prettier eyes, if you can imagine such a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Next is Lynch comparing The Elephant Man and Blue Velvet together against Blue Velvet. Elephant Man, he feels, has a purity to it.
And it's like a fairy tale.
Right. Well, Blue Velvet, Lynch says, he's not sure if Blue Velvet will work yet. So it's kind of interesting that, now remember, this is after the halfway point, and Lynch still doesn't feel confident about his movie.
I can't say that I blame him because I don't know how many times I'm going to say it on this podcast.
Right.
I think it's now, we should have the Ghostwood drinking game where every time Xan says, we wouldn't have X today if David Lynch hadn't done X in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that
Ghostwood here?
Yep, exactly.
It's like Ghostwood here.
It's like Ghostwood here. So we hadn't seen this kind of thing. We hadn't seen this kind of small town puncturing the idea of the idyllic small town in this kind of a way, because not only are you hoping the bad guy gets his what for, but you're also kind of rooting for sort of this trashy lounge singer, which is kind of not,
right. And she seems seriously kind of messed up.
Yeah, exactly. And, the thing is, it's like, usually in these sort of situations, you have somebody who falls into something that they shouldn't. And it's this tragic situation that they have to get out of. Whereas Jeffrey went looking for something he shouldn't.
He went looking for trouble. Yeah.
He went looking for trouble, and he found, and what everything he's doing is to try and help Dorothy. I mean, he doesn't need to get out of anything. Jeffrey keeps getting into things.
Yeah.
He's trying to help. So it's
and the more he tries to help, the more his own personal situation becomes worse because Frank becomes aware of him.
Right.
And threatens him and whatnot and puts him in danger, puts Sandy in danger.
Right. Right, but yeah, he goes looking for it. It's not like
Yeah.
not like he stumbles on it or something like that.
Right.
So,
Uh,
but yeah, that's the kind of stuff we haven't really seen, and we haven't seen things like, let's find an ear in the first 3 minutes of the movie.
yeah, exactly.
I think it's more like the first 10 minutes, but still.
Yeah,
It's,
I get what you're talking about.
yeah, it's kind of gruesome, and this was like the same. While he was making this movie, other things had sort of come out that might have been a little bit more indicative of the fact that audience might be ready for this sort of thing. Like 1985
Right.
was Angel Heart. And Angel Heart is one of those very...
And that was the Mickey Rourke film, right?
Mickey Rourke, yes.
Right, yeah.
Highly recommend
Lisa
this movie.
Bonet was in that, wasn't, if I remember correctly?
Lisa Bonet was in it, yes. Robert De Niro.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Florek of Law and Order fame.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never seen the movie, so...
Oh my God, Charles!
I know! I live a sheltered
Let's
life.
go and watch it. When you're done with Stranger Things,
I would.
call me up and we'll watch it because it's really good, and I haven't seen it in a while, and I'd like to watch it again. Charlotte Rampling is in it too.
Oh, okay.
And Charlotte Rampling is always awesome. Anyway, it's more of a cerebral, gruesome movie.
Right.
Where you didn't have a ton of that. I mean, you had a little bit of it in The Godfather, but...
Like with a horse's head in the bed, that kind of thing?
The horse's head, or Luca Brasi getting strangled.
Right.
Or the police chief and Sollozzo getting shot in the head at the restaurant.
You're right.
You have that sort of violent gruesomeness. And some of it's violent in Angel Heart as well, but it's more of a cerebral gruesome than it is like a horror movie. And this is the 80s where we're used to
it's more psychological horror.
Yeah, it's more psychological thriller type of a thing.
Oh, yeah.
But with gruesomeness. And like I said, with the and we have a little bit of gruesomeness from Hitchcock things like Strangers on a Train, where he goes to light her cigarette and says, what's her name, Marianne? I forget.
Yeah.
Strangers on a Train.
Think so, yeah.
And she says yes, and he just strangles her, and you see it from her point, you see it from his point of view. But it's not gross. It's not moldy ear gross. It's not, Don...
It's not ants crawling over an ear gross.
No, it's not Don tied up bleeding from his head where the ear is gone.
Right,
gross.
or dead yellow man standing,
It's not Yellow Man. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think Angel Heart sort of opened thing, and Angel Heart was very criticized, but at the same time, people were really talking about it, and people saw it because it was kind of a shocker.
Right.
And this was not. He was making this when that came out, so I don't think he knew that the 80s were going to open the door for a different, a little, people being a little more ready for things like Blue Velvet.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, Lynch at this point, he's obviously still pushing those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And this film is obviously a great example of that.
And let's not forget that a naked woman walking down the street in a suburban neighborhood is a true story.
Right. It came from his own experience. Yes.
Yeah, this actually happened to David Lynch. He actually saw this as a child. So, it's not that. I mean, this movie's not that out there as people like to think it is.
No. It just so happened, something that happened to him, and he wanted to kind of share this with everybody through his movie.
Right.
All right. Let's see. What's next? Isabella talks about Dorothy being confused and unpredictable, which is kind of the understatement of the century.
She's very confused and unpredictable. She almost has Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
And she's just trying to do what she can do to deal with whoever she needs to deal with. So.
Well, and then she's also trying to kind of she reaches out to Jeffrey. Like, Jeffrey just happens to be there spying on her. Mm-hmm. But she desperately clings on to him.
She needs somebody in her corner, for sure.
And then, she kind of gets into, like, this whole, like, rough sex with him.
The whole hit me and he doesn't
exactly,
want to,
exactly.
I don't even get the feeling that she necessarily,
a little bit of sadomasochism there.
I don't even get the feeling that she particularly likes that or has done that very often. You know, it feels very new to both of them almost.
But for her, you know, that's what she's the one who initiates that.
Right.
And that's probably the result of because of her experiences with Frank. So she probably figures, well, hey, Jeffrey would probably like this too.
Yeah, whatever I can do to keep him
and Jeffrey's just
happy with me.
Like, what?
Jeffrey's not interested.
Yeah. Exactly.
Jeffrey's a voyeur, but Jeffrey's not a...
Yeah, he's not into that. That's a little too out of his wheelhouse.
He's not a dom. He's a voyeur.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. He's a looker, not a doer.
That's true.
Yep.
He's a lover, not a fighter.
No, not a fighter. Exactly. Nice. Let's see what else. Lynch talks about Dennis Hopper being the perfect Frank. He says he's a great human being, offset, and understands the picture.
And that's and I am going to break into a little bit of the other interviews where Dennis Hopper talks about. He says that, you know, he had just gotten out of rehab, so he didn't have a career at the time.
Right.
And
he was trying to rebuild his.
He was trying to rebuild his, yeah. And Hopper was this wild card that people had no idea what to expect from because he had been an addict. And so who knows what he could have done.
Right.
But we'd seen Dennis Hopper as sort of a weirder character and an over-the-top character. So, and you know,
he had something to prove because here he was. He insists, like, you know, like that he had to convince Lynch that he got himself clean,
mm-hmm.
and, you know, probably also the producer.
And he told his management, "I want this part." He really went after the part of Frank Booth,
right? And
because there's quite a range to Frank. You know, Frank is, you know, he can be very, very gentle. He can act like a baby. He can act like a crazy person. He can cry. He can kill. There's a big range to Frank. And I think with the nitrous, and we've talked about Hopper and the drugs and the nitrous before, but
right.
With the nitrous, the fact that Frank is a junkie, it's like Hopper's your perfect choice.
Yeah.
Because everybody, that's what they know. Like, that's what People Magazine's been talking about with Dennis Hopper for the last...
Yeah. And that's one of the things...
Or another binge for Hopper. You know?
Yeah.
So that's what the world is expecting him. So I think there is a little bit of a real-world believability that Dennis Hopper is going to be out of his freaking mind and a complete and total wackadoo.
It's kind of perfect casting, really.
It's perfect. I can't imagine anybody else playing Frank Booth.
Yeah. Even though apparently it was not the first choice. As we find out in the booklet, which we'll talk about. But
right.
Hopper was not their first choice for Frank. But apparently he was Isabella's after meeting, you know, like Isabella knew him.
Yeah, Isabella,
or at least knew of him, I think.
Yeah, he's like, this we got to do.
Yeah. Lynch also talks about Jack Nance, you know, which obviously appeals to Twin Peaks fans. He says Lynch likes to hear his stories. He's
a great storyteller, and can you imagine like that? You know, Pete Martell method of storytelling.
Oh, I know, right?
Just telling you everything. I think that's awesome.
The log lady stole my truck. Powder blue.
The log lady didn't steal your truck. Wyndham Earl did.
I love that. Dennis Hopper in the next scene says he doesn't understand all the lighting preparation that Lynch does. So this is him kind of like going like, I'm not sure about all this artsy fartsy stuff. Just shoot the scene, damn it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's like he's about the performance where David Lynch is about the visual.
Right.
Which is why film and theater are a collaborative art.
Which kind of makes me
you need all of the pieces to make it perfect.
Which kind of makes me wonder is like, well, you know, Lynch talked about that Hopper understood the film. But did he really? I kind of wonder about that. I kind of think that maybe that Hopper convinced Lynch that he did, but maybe in reality didn't understand a lot of it.
Based on his performance alone, Hopper understood Frank Booth.
Okay, he understood the character.
And
maybe he understood the character, but didn't understand the film.
He understood the film. I just don't think he necessarily had the patience for the process of filmmaking.
Right. Okay.
So that's a
Or at
I
least,
forget. I think
or at
it
least
was.
Lynch's approach to it compared to what he's experienced, because he's a pretty experienced actor by this point.
He's
So
an experienced actor, but whether or not he feels that the lighting is going to make or break a scene,
yeah,
Hopper's the actor. He's probably thinking the performance is going to make or break the scene,
right,
regardless of how it's lit.
yeah. And
So
Lynch is obviously a much more visual director than
mhm.
probably Hopper was used to.
And you need those different perspectives, and you need everybody prioritizing their part in the collaboration
Right.
for it to be perfect. So you need Frank to feel like the performance is the most important thing, and you need the director to feel like the visual is just as important as the soundscape or as the performances or as the actors. You need that. So
Yeah.
works out well.
Let's see. Next, he Isabella talks that about how happy she is that David Lynch hired Dennis Hopper.
Hmm.
She says her admiration for Dennis brought more to her character.
Right.
So apparently she was kind of like a fan of his
And
work.
I think you can sort of see that because when you admire someone,
Hmm.
there's a level of intimidation.
Right.
I don't think it's a malevolent type of intimidation, but there's a reverence and an intimidation there that Dorothy needs to have when it comes to Frank. She needs to look at him as having some sort of power over her. Dorothy needs to be able to feel power
Okay.
being held over her.
Right.
And if she has a reverence over Dennis Hopper, then she's probably thinking, "Oh my gosh, here's this that." He probably has some sort of spell on her.
Maybe a little bit of pressure because of wanting to make, like, as far as Isabella,
Right. Right.
she wants to prove herself to Dennis Hopper and probably wants to impress him.
She wants to rise to his level.
Right. And
Yeah.
so she's probably going to put more into her performance
Right.
as a result, and so maybe she does kind of feel a little bit of pressure, and maybe that kind of the at least from her perspective, she's creating that connection
Yes,
to
I think so
Hopper.
too.
So therefore that connection will carry through in Dorothy's connection to Frank.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see what else. There's audio rehearsal of Isabella singing Blue Velvet,
Hmm.
and then we get Lynch talking about the industry, or I'm sorry, about industry, not the film industry, but actual industry.
Actual industry, like,
Like he
you know,
says radiation is too boring for him, which is a very funny statement. But he says, but smoke, steel mills, oil, and sludge you can see. So
and
he likes tangible things. Something that you can visually
right.
see,
I'm sure David Lynch spent. I'm sure he spent a decent amount of his childhood watching
right,
radiation horror movies,
yeah,
as everybody did in the 50s and 60s. But there is something tangible, and you know, we've seen that. Steel mills. I don't know, maybe like a sawmill,
yeah.
and oil and sludge.
Well,
Where we see
eraser head, or yeah,
yeah, pencil factory, yeah, that kind of thing.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Now,
uh,
obviously, he does kind of get into radiation a little bit because remember Part 8 of Twin Peaks: The Return,
that is very, very true.
and he made that one of his visual masterpieces, I
But he
think.
made it tangible. He still made it tangible with that
Exactly.
garbage idea that came from space.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, and Mother or whatever, and yeah, exactly. Next scene is Brad Dourif, and I was kind of disappointed by this a little bit. Brad Dourif says Raymond is boring, and he said he wouldn't do this role for any other director but David Lynch.
I'm going to
I
say,
was a little disappointed by that.
well,
I mean, I kind of get his point, but
Raymond is a waste of a Brad Dourif.
okay. So you think it's fair?
I think it's fair. I think part of Frank's cronies
Yeah.
are, you're supposed to have this weird group of people because that's who Frank would be around.
Right.
But Frank is the standout, for sure.
Right. And you don't want
And
Brad Dourif overshadowing Frank.
I think if you put Brad Dourif and Dennis Hopper in a room, they could have a personality death match.
Yeah. You think they would? I think creatively they probably would butt heads, right?
Not even creatively butt heads. Just if they were in just a contest of being
out there,
their animated selves.
Yeah.
Brad Dourif is very, very animated and very visual. Just think of the things he did with his eyes as Peter DeVries.
Right. Exactly.
And even vocally, when Brad Dourif was Chucky, and all he had was his voice.
Mm-hmm.
He's very animated. He's very, very
emotive.
Emotive. Yes, thank you. That's
You're
a good
welcome.
word.
You're welcome.
So I think it is a little bit of a waste of a Brad Dourif, because I know sometimes, I remember watching this one of the first times going, when's Brad Dourif going to do something Brad Dourif-y?
Right. But he doesn't really.
So,
Except for
doesn't. Yeah. So I can get that, but then you also think of the other cronies, like Jack Nance's character. They just are kind of there.
They're
in
flunkies.
The background.
They're supposed to be flunkies.
They're just flunkies, yeah. And Jack Nance is a very similar one. I think he's a little more understated, but again, put him in a room with a Brad Dourif, and they'll have a personality death match.
Well, and that's a great segue for the next scene, because Jack Nance tells this story that apparently Lynch wanted him and Dourif in the same car together.
Yeah.
And he says, then he talks about that he doesn't go to the movies and he can't get beyond the suspension of disbelief.
Which I think is hilarious.
Right.
For somebody who is in the movie.
Yes.
That requires the most suspension of disbelief.
Right.
In the history of the moving picture.
Working for David Lynch, yes, you would think that would be a requirement, right?
You are Henry Spencer.
I know, right?
Is there a movie that requires more suspension of disbelief
than Eraserhead?
Oh
my God.
And there's not. There's not.
No.
I
totally agree with. I'm totally with you on that.
I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That he can't suspend disbelief.
Have you watched Eraserhead, Jack?
But he'll cut up one of those fake chickens just like regular chickens and be great at it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So I think he has a respect for the craft, but just I don't think he enjoys the weirdness of it all.
Because it's so easy to believe that a guy going out fishing would kind of go out and there'd be a girl wrapped in plastic right out there
or
on the beach.
A fisherman who's good at handling fish would somehow get a fish caught in the percolator.
Right.
Don't
drink that coffee.
Fellas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
It was.
You did Jack Nance, right? I mean, you remember that, don't you?
What? Yeah.
You remember that you're Jack Nance, right? You realize you're Jack Nance?
Yeah. Jack Nance, have you met Jack Nance before? Just saying. All right.
Jack Nance.
Next.
I'm at your house right now.
Yeah.
Call me.
Oh, nice. Very nice Lost Highway reference.
Thank you very much.
Which, that's kind of... We didn't talk about this, but Zane and I saw Lost Highway not too long ago.
Yes, we did. It was Charles' first time actually sitting on
I've never seen that. Chris was there, Zane's husband, Chris, and we're all watching this. And Chris, I don't think, had seen it either.
Mm-mm. Chris had not seen it at all.
So we are. We're like two Lost Highway virgins.
Uh-huh.
And
I, of course, took the day off to see it the day it came out.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it was part of the David Lynch Director's Series that Mike McGrainer is putting on this year at the Studio 35.
Right.
Which in 2 weeks will be Fire Walk with Me.
I can't believe it's. I can't believe it's almost here. I'm so excited.
I can't freaking wait.
That's gonna be awesome. So
excited. So yeah, it's it was fun to show to show Lost Highway to people who hadn't actually seen Lost Highway before.
Right.
I was glad you guys enjoyed it, and I'm glad you got to see Robert Loggia's speech.
Yes.
On tailgating.
Yeah, I kind of seen some of that before. Like I think I told you that I'd seen some scenes flipping around the cable channels.
Yeah.
But I never watched the entire movie all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that the Loggia scene where he's all about tailgating and going off on this guy, that's epic.
I want you to get a manual.
Yeah,
I want you to study that mother effer.
And Robert Blake is just uber creepy. Especially knowing what we know about Robert Blake in real life.
Now that we know what we know about Robert Blake, but yeah, Robert Blake, this is the greatest thing Robert Blake ever did.
Yeah.
And he does an amazing performance in this, and he is the standout, and he's in it probably. Like if you add up all of his screen time, I bet it barely reaches 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's the standout performance.
But he makes the most of it.
Of this movie.
Because he's just such an enigmatic character. The mystery man.
He certainly does. He's so visually striking.
Right. With
the makeup and it's very, very interesting. Yeah. And then seriously, 3 years later he goes to prison for killing his wife.
In an interesting turn of events.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so back to Blue Velvet. Sorry, I just had to kind of throw that little aside in there on that one because it was a lot of fun. Next one is Lynch talking to us about living in a dark world with confusions. He says, people don't know what's going on.
And nobody really knows what the hell is going on most of the time.
No.
I mean, everybody's just making it up as they go.
Pretty much. Yeah. Pretty much. Next is Dennis talking about a woman who asked him if he wrote the part because it sounds like him.
There's nobody who can do Frank.
Yeah.
And, like I said, when we talk about the booklet, we'll talk about there's some good choices of good actors, but they're not Frank.
Again, it's perfect. Again, it's perfect casting, really.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And he apparently finds Lynch's mind a subjective trip. And Lynch asked him what he thought what people would think of the movie, and Hopper told him he thought it's essentially a horror film, but in a subconscious dream world.
It is pretty horrific.
Ping.
Yeah. So, you can hear that?
Oh yeah, I can hear that.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I can't turn it. It's
That's all right.
It's syncing. It's a text message. So
no big deal.
I apologize. I can't turn it off.
That's all right. Dennis doesn't think Lynch is a film buff and that he's not up to date on movies being made.
That's the thing. He's David Lynch is a David Lynch film buff.
Right.
He likes what he likes, but even David Lynch admits he didn't get into this for filmmaking. He's an art buff.
Exactly. He's an artist. So essentially it's a tool. Film is a tool for David Lynch to create his art.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not like, a lot of these guys, that watched all these obscure movies from
He's not Martin Scorsese.
No, exactly.
About film.
That is a perfect example.
Yeah. Martin Scorsese talks about film the way we talk about film. He just geeks out over it.
He's a film geek. Yes, Scorsese is.
And that is not David Lynch at all.
No, and David Lynch is an art geek. That's what he geeks out over. The visuals, the style, the audio, the music.
Yeah, he's not in this to make movies. He's in this to make a visual painting.
Right. And it's just essentially like his canvas, and that's why he's willing to use things like television because he knows television is another medium,
right,
for him to convey his art in addition to film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Let's see what else. He says that Dennis thinks that he finds it better that Lynch is dealing with his own vision and subconscious. Which I thought was an interesting statement.
That is an interesting.
Next is we have one more week of principal photography. And at this point, Lynch says he feels good about the last 3 weeks of night shoots. He says he's happier on this picture than any other before. And he talks a little bit about transcendental meditation that he does. He says the meditation gives him energy, and he's concerned about everyone else getting tired. which I think is kind of funny.
I think that's adorable. Yeah.
And he says there's no creative problems on the set. So, yeah, it's like, you know, everybody else is having problems, but me. What?
Everybody else is tired, but I just want to be here all the time.
Yeah, exactly. What's your problem?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing meditation so you can be energetic like me? And
seriously, we're making the greatest movie.
We'll just breeze through these 3 weeks of night shoots that drain everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then they're probably going, yeah, David, whatever. Next is footage of Lynch with Fred Caruso, the producer, where they talk. And then we get, as we kind of wrap things up shortly, we get some filming from the last day of shooting with little Donnie.
Little Donnie.
Yeah, that little scene where he puts his little propeller hat on.
Yep.
And then we kind of get some footage from everybody 15 months later. And that's that's pretty much it.
After they've, after the movie's released and they're getting their Oscar nominations.
Yep.
It's pretty adorable.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I meant to look up this director to see if he actually married that woman.
Oh, yeah.
I need to look that up.
I forgot about that too. Yeah, didn't he talk about that? Didn't he?
Apparently,
because he kind of asked Lynch for like advice about his love life, which I thought was kind of interesting.
He fell in love with somebody like 3 weeks before, but then he was like, I got to go to America and do this thing.
Yeah.
And then David Lynch offers. He's like, hey, do you want to use my phone to call her? He's like, yeah, I don't even know her phone number.
It's like, dude, really? I kind of think. Yeah.
I was thinking that when you were packing, you probably should have remembered to do that, but whatever. I don't know.
Are you sure you're not Kyle MacLachlan's girlfriend? No, I'm just saying. In college? No. The way you're treating that relationship, just saying.
Future in comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, are you Megan Mullally in this situation here?
Exactly. All right, so do you want to talk the interviews next, or do you want to talk the booklet? The spiffy booklet?
Let's talk Angelo.
Okay, from the interviews.
And then let's combine the booklet and the other interviews, because I think there's a lot of similar information.
Okay.
Because, we should probably wrap up this Blu-ray. I mean, we've spent 2 episodes on it.
I know, we just spent an hour talking about
we
all
spent
this.
an hour on this. Honestly, I think that this behind-the-scenes short film is like worth the price of the Blu-ray in itself.
Okay.
I thought it was fascinating.
All right, so you want to just try to hit the highlights then, and...
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Angelo.
Okay, when we talk about the Angelo, this is the 2017 New Jersey interview. It's about 15 minutes, 47 seconds. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, if you remember when we talked about Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, the Criterion version of that, I think this is from that same interview, only this is the Blue Velvet portion of that interview.
The Blue Velvet portion of that interview.
Yeah.
And Angelo is freaking adorable. First of all,
right?
He's
seems like a very pleasant guy to talk to.
He's just adorable. He had this like 1950s New York childhood where he even said all the other kids were outside playing stickball, and I had to practice the piano, and
like he's somebody out of Dick Tracy.
Seriously. And he didn't want to do it. And then he said that his brother came home, found out he had stopped playing the piano. His brother being like a jazz musician. And he said that when he found out that he had quit the piano, he chastised his father and said, don't let this kid quit playing. He needs to have music.
Right.
And so he then had to do it again. But then he'd gotten a little bit older and he found out that playing the piano got him girls.
Hey, go figure.
Which you just wonder how many people keep playing an instrument.
Yeah. Like a guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only person that kept with an instrument in spite of, an instrument that didn't necessarily get them girls was probably like Weird Al.
Right.
Like, I don't think that instrument necessarily got you girls, but...
not the accordion, go figure.
Not the accordion, no, I don't necessarily think so.
But yeah, that's one of my own personal regrets, is that not being musically talented enough to do an instrument. I did play some drums.
Nice.
But never can't really compare it to obviously someone like Angelo Badalamenti. No.
Can't really see.
Not even in the same planet, really.
Yeah. Girls can't necessarily sit next to
No, and the drummers, drummers doesn't quite really grab.
Yeah, exactly.
The ladies. So yeah.
But But yeah, what he was talking about, how he was brought in as more of a vocal coach
Right.
for Isabella Rossellini. And David Lynch wanted to use another piece of music that Dino didn't want to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, hey, can you write something and David will write some lyrics?
Right.
And they're all like, oh, this is kind of a dumb idea. This isn't going to work. And it turns into my single most favorite piece of music that David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti have ever written together.
Well, you couldn't mean Mysteries of Love, could you?
I could be exactly meaning that. Which
The mysteries of love
I
will flow.
that plays over the menu of it.
Yeah.
And I'll just, after I finish watching this, just let the menu go for a while, just so I could listen to it.
It's like, I don't even need to put in the Julie Cruz CD. I can just listen to this.
Or my Blue Velvet soundtrack. It's just right here, and I'm just going to go do some dishes, and I'll let this menu go for a while.
Right.
But yeah, they created Mysteries of Love, which is my absolute favorite Angelo Badalamenti David Lynch piece.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. And then Lynch, I love that he tells the story about how he met Lynch and made like this. I guess Fred Caruso, the producer, introduced them, and I guess Lynch thought his work was peachy keen.
And he's like, I don't even know what that means.
Right, exactly, because it's like, I'm from Brooklyn or whatever, and you're like, I have no idea what is he talking about. This kind of, like folksy Midwestern. Yeah. But,
yeah, and that's the thing, and I mean, Charles, you and I are sitting here listening to it going, wow, peachy keen, that's like,
yeah,
that's pretty good. That's good praise. We're Midwestern. We know
exactly.
What the hell
we know what that means. Like, even though we're not from Missoula, Montana, we know what that means. But so it's pretty swell.
It is pretty swell.
Yeah,
exactly.
Swell.
But yeah. Clark, there's not a lot of people this day and age that feel comfortable using that word.
I love that.
I just always felt kind of was natural.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. I set you up for that one. Nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I love stories, and I feel like every time somebody talks about David Lynch, they make a point of talking about how nice and not weird he is.
Right. Very down to earth,
I think it's so funny because I don't know why people think that people are exactly like their art. And I guess it's because...
that preconception, just you figure...
That preconceived notion, right. I guess it's because I've seen interviews with David Lynch or Roger Corman or Alan Moore or something like that where their output is their imagination. It's not their everyday life.
Right.
David Lynch is not drinking fish percolator coffee and finding ears all damn day.
Exactly.
That's not what he does. He's not, he doesn't...
It's those expectations people have. They figure, well, okay, he came up with these ideas. That must be how his brain processes things.
Well, and it's just that sort of a mentality just goes to show how little we value creativity as a species,
right?
And as a culture. That creativity is something for children,
yes,
or it's something for weirdos. That the concept of creativity is lost on a lot of people, I think.
Right.
So,
well, usually that's people that don't have creativity and aren't imaginative,
or just even
they can't,
or just any sort of imagination whatsoever. They stopped letting it run away with them after.
Yeah. They think they have to grow up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know, but and I also love stories about David Lynch and his folksiness. I think that's really adorable. Belly. Ugh. Whatever. Now the cats are in some sort of like a literal pissing contest with using each other's cat boxes these days.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's just kind of annoying.
Okay, that's disturbing.
Yeah, it's just weird. Whatever. Anyway, my cat just came in my room and peed. That's all.
Oh, is that all?
That's all. In a cat box.
Yeah.
But,
I'm sure everybody appreciated you sharing that. That's
there's a cat box in here. It's not that. And she just peed. What do you... Interesting. Anyway, so
That's
okay, Angelo. We can
fun.
finish out Angelo, and then we can talk about the booklet and the interviews together.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's all I have on Angelo, really.
Yeah,
Unless you've got anything else.
I just thought it was interesting how it was sort of this afterthought for him to write a song as a money-saving measure, and it's like the greatest song ever.
Yeah, and it's just exactly. So
Yeah,
it's such a great song and perfect for this film.
Oh, perfect for this film.
Yeah. Now the other interview on this is the "It's a Strange World," the filming of Blue Velvet, which is also 15 minutes. Which is essentially the crew, a lot of the makeup guys, second assistant director, etc.
And I think we talked about this a little bit last time.
Yeah, because this is where like the Mr. Ear thing, and
the two main points I want to take from this are the Yellow Man,
right? Yeah, Fred Pickler. That's the guy. That's the actor who plays the Yellow Man.
Fred Pickler,
and who just seems like this guy they pulled in off the street.
And he kind of was. He was local.
Yeah.
But
he's talking about the scene where he gets shot.
Mm-hmm.
And he knocks the lamp over too hard the first time he did it.
Yep.
You know that scene where he kind of reflexively swats at the lamp.
Uh-huh.
But apparently the first time he just smacked it all the way across the room.
Just went all the way. Yeah, he did way too much of it. So.
And then another time when after Dennis Hopper shoots him and kills him.
Right.
Then he says that Dennis told him to close his eyes after being killed because, him looking at him with open eyes was throwing Dennis off. So I could just imagine Hopper being like really pissed off, like, "You're supposed to close your eyes, damn it!
Close your eyes when you die,
idiot!" Yeah.
But yeah, this was a good one too because they have they revisit some of the filming locations. So
yeah,
we can go to North Carolina and go to that apartment building and stuff like that.
You could go to the stairwell where Jeffrey went up and down the stairs as a exterminator. And
can you imagine living in that hotel in that apartment building and being like all of a sudden strangers are walking up and down your back stairs taking pictures? Like those damn David Lynch fans again. Ugh, we get like 2 a year. They're so annoying.
Yeah, they're probably like, "Oh no, there's a new Criterion Collection. Oh my god.
Oh, Blue Velvet again. Sick of this."
I know, right? That's pretty funny.
But yeah, I think we talked about this last time that there's really not a lot of other documented use of it before Blue Velvet, but this is the first time we have silicone.
Yeah, they have the first silicone ear, or at least the first silicone prop, according to Jeff Goodwin, the makeup supervisor.
And it's necessity being the mother of invention. And something cheap but sturdy and
the creepy part also because the hair attached to the ear is actually David Lynch's.
I know, isn't that bizarre?
That apparently he swept up while just they were cutting his hair and
he got a haircut. He's like, "Hey, I could use that, and I have no money on my movie, so give it back."
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then another great part of this is Shaw Burney talking about the creation of Ben's microphone.
That was fantastic. Where he just kind of goes out in the truck.
Yeah, he's just like
that caged light bulb.
Yeah, Lynch says, go find me something to use. And apparently this Burney guy was just like, I have no idea what to get him. And he's like digging through all this junk.
Uh-huh.
And then he just happens to he sees this image of himself in a work light that apparently he probably hung up just so he could see what stuff he was rifling through.
Uh-huh. And he sees that it kind of looks like an old microphone.
Right.
And it's going to light him.
And then he gets the whole bing light bulb over his head going.
And again, necessity being the mother of invention, this is one of the most iconic scenes in this movie.
Right. And then he says,
"Go find me something from the truck."
Right. And he brings it out and he says that Lynch just went apeshit over this. His quote.
Oh, so perfect.
And was completely joy over this. Just really geeked over it. And supposedly couldn't wait to shoot the scene out at that point.
I can't blame him. I thought it is one of the most iconic scenes in this movie.
Exactly.
For sure.
So very cool. So it just it just seemed like this the smiling hand of fate reached in and got that, and it was perfect. So
yep.
And then we get the very cool story from Ian Wolfe, the second assistant director, about Frank's death scene.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought we should talk about because it's kind of interesting.
I think we should.
where apparently Lynch wanted real brain matter for the floor of that scene. So where did he...
Just go down to the butcher shop and ask for that and don't get on an FBI list.
Yeah, exactly. So, brain matter, go figure, is a little hard to come by.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's on every street corner.
It's not like Young Frankenstein where you could just, go down and go through the Abby Normal section.
I ain't got nobody.
And nobody's got me.
Yeah-da-da-da.
I love that scene.
In 2019, I'm sure you can get brain matter in any corner store, but in 1985, it was a little hard to come by.
That's true. They haven't quite developed the field of harvesting yet.
Yeah.
So, apparently the brain was shipped from West Germany to Wilmington. And all that's because David Lynch wanted real brain matter, as opposed to just faking it with something.
For
maybe a split second shot of the floor.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that whole thing cracks me up. It's like, really, David? This is where we're spending our money that we don't have?
Exactly.
But you got to admire his authenticity for the whole thing.
It's the artist. It's the whole artist mentality. It has to be. Yeah, so that's pretty funny. And then they talk. This is where David Hartley, the casting production assistant, talks about going to the seediest bars in Wilmington.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I love the fact that the Slow Club is a real club.
Right. Exactly. So that's pretty much the interviews. So we might as well talk about the booklet now, really quickly.
Let's talk a little bit about who could have been in this movie.
Okay.
I definitely want to talk about that.
All right. Well, you want to talk about that? You want to talk about that first?
Yeah, let's just talk about that first because
Okay,
I think we sort of touched on it, and I think we should talk about it now.
Yeah. Well, so Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper, as much as I love Harry Dean Stanton,
right?
Frank Booth was almost Harry Dean Stanton.
Right. Exactly.
Harry Dean Stanton is like, no, this is too mean for me. I'm like, this is not who I can't do this.
Yeah, I can't quite picture Harry Dean Stanton.
Effing everything that moves. No, I can't picture that either.
No, I can't either. Yeah. I mean, sure, he's an interesting actor. I'll give him that, but
he's a great actor. But
Carl Rodd is not Frank Booth.
He's Carl Rodd. He's not Frank Booth.
Exactly.
And you gotta love Harry Dean Stanton for knowing that about himself.
Right.
So
he's very obviously very self-aware that he also apparently with Harry Dean Stanton, he said after Lynch offered it to him, he apparently didn't want to go down the violent trip.
Violent trip, yes, exactly.
Yeah, so he's just not that guy, obviously. And apparently also Willem Dafoe came in to discuss the role as well.
Which I think if anybody else had to be Frank Booth,
Willem Dafoe would be a good one, yes.
Willem Dafoe would be a good one.
He brings a lot of that crazy energy. That would be good. He brings
a lot of that crazy energy. He has that sort of
creepiness,
but also
dangerous,
unorthodox handsomeness that Dennis Hopper has.
Yeah.
But I still think... I just think that everything was aligned perfectly for Hopper at the time. Especially, I think that this was the perfect role for him to get back his career, to start getting roles again.
Right.
Because everybody... from Apocalypse Now, who then became a drunk.
Yes.
And now... So I think there was already some preconceived notions about him that worked out to his favor. And I think Hopper does a better job of the range. I think Hopper's range is a little more pure than Willem Dafoe's range. Like if Willem Dafoe were to cry when he's baby instead of daddy, I feel like it would look like Willem Dafoe crying.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like a crazy grown-up crying.
Right. It wouldn't be the character. It would be the actor.
Or even just the character. Like it's the crazy adult crying where I feel like when Hopper does it, he's really regressing.
Okay.
He's regressing to those
that emotional state.
Yeah, I think he's a little more versatile than
Okay.
Defoe's.
Okay, you think he has more range?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And I think when was Defoe Jesus?
I have no idea.
That was a couple years later, I think, wasn't it?
I guess
In
so. I don't know. I don't know
Last
what.
Temptation of Christ.
Oh, I forgot. Okay,
Yeah.
I'd never seen that movie either. So,
Okay. So I think it was, I don't know.
really,
I just think that I think Hopper was still a better choice, but Defoe would have done okay. It
I
would
can.
have been a different movie, but he would have done okay.
I think that's a fair argument. I think that
Yeah.
is because um, I think Willem Dafoe can be great.
Oh, Willem Dafoe's
he's
fantastic.
played good characters. He's played bad characters. I mean, here he was in, in oh, was it that I'm trying to remember the Pixar movie he was in. Um, oh shoot, what am I remember? I'm trying to remember which one it
He's
was.
in a Pixar
Oh,
movie?
Finding Nemo. Yeah, he
He's
played.
in Finding Nemo. I completely forgot about
Yeah,
that.
Willem Nemo, because he's the guy that he does the they go through the whole that kind of like they're in the tank and in the dentist office.
He's at the doctor's office.
He's one of the fish. He's like the leader of the group, and they do go the whole big, the shark bait, hoo ha ha, the Mount Wanahakalugi.
That's right.
Bit. That's that guy.
That's Willem Dafoe. I forgot all about that.
That's Willem Dafoe, and
Yeah.
he's done stuff like that, but then he's also done like Harry or Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, and Spider-Man, and all kinds of other
Boondock Saints and
Boondock
all
Saints,
kinds of
and
things like that, yeah.
Wild at Heart. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
so he's obviously a very versatile actor, but I can kind of see where you're coming from.
Exactly. I just think Hopper is so. And history is 2020. Hindsight's 2020. We know that this is the best. This movie is what it is, and it's perfect in itself. It would have been completely different, but I think Hopper was just.
Yeah.
Hopper added a crazy that
He
was a little more versatile of a crazy.
He was born for this role.
I definitely think so. Yeah. The same way I think Kyle MacLachlan, the role he was born to play is Dale Cooper.
Right. It's his definitive role.
That is his absolute definitive role.
Yeah.
And Hopper, I wouldn't necessarily call this his definitive role, but it's up there.
Yeah. It's a top 5.
Yeah, it's definitely a top 5. I think it would be between this and like Apocalypse Now and
or Easy Rider.
Easy Rider, yeah. I think probably most people would say Easy Rider.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is definitely up there as
maybe top 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Okay. Isabella Rossellini, meanwhile.
And I brought up White Nights before.
Right.
I'm going to bring it up again. White Nights, which was released in 1985, was a Taylor Hackford film about the Cold War, essentially.
Right.
Where Mikhail Baryshnikov was a Russian defector, and crash lands into Russia, and then is sort of kept there, and runs back into and gets thrown back in with his old girlfriend, who is Helen Mirren, who, by the way, when I was a child, I had seen her in 2 movies. I had seen her in White, and I had seen her in 2010.
Right.
So when I found out that she wasn't actually Russian, I was really surprised. I thought she was a Russian actor.
She played a Russian cosmonaut in 2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Great. So those are the only 2 things I'd seen her in, and then I forget what the next thing I saw was, but I was like, whoa, she's British? I had no idea. But yeah, Helen Mirren is who David Lynch wanted for Dorothy Vallens. And I think that would have been fantastic.
Right.
Because I don't know if I've told you this, Charles.
Yes.
Helen Mirren's my favorite actress of all time.
Oh.
Yeah. I
can respect that because I really like Helen Mirren. So.
I think Helen Mirren is freaking amazing. And So as much as I think she would have been fantastic, I think Isabella is a little darker and a little more striking.
She's more.
And
I think she's better for a David Lynch film.
I think,
She's got kind of an edge to her.
and by this point, Helen Mirren, there's something about the Isabella Rossellini clean slate
Mm-hmm.
that was her as a performer. Because Helen Mirren, we'd seen her since, the early 70s,
Right.
And Helen Mirren, I'm not saying Helen Mirren was old, but she was older.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the feeling that a character that this character as Helen Mirren, I might believe that as a lounge singer, she might have seen more shit than Isabella Rossellini has seen.
Right.
Whereas I feel like Isabella Rossellini, her character seems like she is doing what she can to hold herself together, but there's a vulnerability to her that I don't know that I would have believed as much with a Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
Not believed as much, but I think it's more well done with somebody as fresh-faced as Isabella Rossellini was at the time.
Well, and I think there's that kind of with Isabella, at least in this movie. Dorothy needs to be a little emotionally unstable.
A little bit.
And while obviously Helen Mirren's capable of playing that, I think it's much more believable from Isabella Rossellini.
I think so too. I think because we have no expectations of her at this point.
Right.
And she's such a striking person, and like you said, she looks like her mother.
Yeah.
Who we've seen play crazy.
And she's an exotic beauty.
Yeah. Well, we've seen Ingrid Bergman play, well, not crazy, but someone that is being made to become crazy.
Right.
When you think of like Notorious or Gaslight, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
There's that vulnerability of her, and she's able to get out of it, but there is that vulnerability that I feel Helen Mirren's a little too strong for. And as much as I love her, and I'll watch anything with Helen Mirren, she's amazing, but I just think that this was definitely a better choice.
Yeah, I totally agree. We get the story that apparently she was cast purely by chance, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
She was working, I guess, or not working, but she was at a place called, she was at apparently Dino De Laurentiis, and I think this was Raffaella De Laurentiis' ex-husband.
Right.
He was there, he had a restaurant named Allo Allo in New York, and she was there with some girlfriends and Raffaella's ex-husband. That's it. And they pushed their tables together which allowed Isabella to talk to David Lynch.
Right. It's like they just ran into each other at dinner.
Yeah.
And they were with people. David Lynch was with somebody that knew one of the people that Isabella was with. And so they were like, oh, hey, nice to see you here. And they got to talking, and that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So,
and they apparently were talking about Lynch casting Blue Velvet, and then apparently he sent her the script the next day with a note that said, maybe you'd like to read for the part.
And she was just blown away by the script. And
so obviously he had her eye on her
right.
at that point.
Right.
After talking with her. And then she went and asked Marty Scorsese.
Marty.
Marty, that's what she refers to him. Martin, who was her husband from 1979 to 1982.
They were married briefly in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was married to everybody at some point in this in Hollywood land. Asked him about Lynch, and then he told her to go see Eraserhead because he admired Lynch as a director.
Martin Scorsese is a film nerd.
So if you get Scorsese's seal of approval, I say you're gold.
Yeah, you just do it. Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. So apparently, yeah, just one of those things is like, hey, do you go like to the hip restaurant that all the Hollywood types go to? And So it's who you know, or at least
Yeah, that's the thing.
where
Or
where to
who's
go, where to
dressed
hang
at
out,
the same
or
time
where
as you.
yeah, or where to hang out so you can
Uh-huh.
and let the stars align as they do. So
Yep.
yep. So I thought that was interesting. Some other things about the booklet, some interesting things, I think, were MacLachlan talking about being intimidated about getting undressed in front of Isabella Rossellini,
I can
and the
totally
whole bit,
imagine that.
and the whole scene of pretending to hit her, which obviously wasn't his thing.
No, and I love Kyle for that, he talks about how incredibly uncomfortable that can actually be.
Right.
So, as it should be
Uh,
for decent humans.
right. Exactly. You would hope anyway. We talked about the spectators watching the nude scene, so we don't need to go into that. Uh,
Hmm.
Apparently, after the first time the film was screened, Dino De Laurentiis said no one would want to distribute the film. So he's like, screw it. I'm going to form my own distribution company and do it myself.
Hey, you got to do,
So,
sometimes when you want it done right, you got to do it yourself.
yeah. And this was after, apparently, he'd financed the movie, brought in Fred Caruso,
Hmm.
who got the budget down from $10 million to $4 million. And this is where I talked about that the deal was made that if Lynch made the movie for less money, Dino wouldn't tell him what to do. David liked the idea, but Fred didn't even understand the script.
Yeah, that's the thing. And
So,
this is a strange story, and it's not what you
yeah,
think of. Up until now, like I said, weird movies took place in big cities, not in small
yeah,
towns.
yeah,
So it's a different one.
yeah. And they said that the previous screenings for the film went badly, with people walking out and bad comment cards.
Hmm.
Dino, however, decided, they're crazy, and he refused to cut a single frame. So that's to his credit.
Dino's been around, and that Dino knows what's right in movies. Talk about another film nerd is Dino for sure.
Right, right. And obviously, yeah, so if this had been in the hands of any other producer,
Hmm.
probably wouldn't have gotten that film.
No,
And it probably wouldn't be the classic that it is.
right, exactly.
And then, of course, they talk about Roger Ebert hating the film
Roger Ebert.
and accusing Lynch of misogyny.
I mean, I have a lot of opinions on this. Being female, I have opinions.
Right,
And
right. You're probably in a better position to talk about this than I am.
I guess I just feel like when the person doing bad things to a woman is the antagonist, I'm okay with that.
He's not the protagonist.
Right. I don't want like this is not like a Luke and Laura situation here, okay? I think, Luke and Laura are like the perfect example of freaking Stockholm syndrome that I've ever seen. He rapes her, and then a couple of years later they get married. Okay.
This would be Luke and Laura on General Hospital.
Luke and Laura on General Hospital, yes. Where he is so obsessed with her and loves her so much that he can't stand it, that he rapes her, and then that's what makes her realize how much he loves her, and now they're married. And, thank God they're divorced now, but whatever.
Yeah, well, and then they got, he became the hero
Mm-hmm.
because when they did that whole Ice Princess
Oh my God.
storyline with Scorpio. I actually watched it at that point. I thought that was cool.
Oh yeah,
because
there's
it had this cool spy thing going on to it.
And I love you, Anthony Geary. I love you, Jeannie Francis, but I do not like those writers. And Jeannie Francis, who is, by the way, the wife of,
No.
Jonathan Frakes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Jonathan Frakes.
Now that you mention that, I do remember that. You're right. Oh my God.
I
haven't thought about that in years.
I read some interview where he was asked who his favorite actress was.
Yeah.
He said Jeannie Francis, and I'm like, you are adorable, Jonathan Frakes, and I love you. Anyway, he
would have probably gotten in so much trouble had he not said that.
Oh well, still, I mean, my God.
Yeah.
The thing is, when you have
I think it was like North and South. They got hooked up. One of the North and South.
Yeah, it was North.
Miniseries. That's when they hooked up.
When you have bad things happening to women,
Mm-hmm.
You could maybe say that it's a bit of a facile bit of storytelling
Right.
because bad things always happen to women, and the concept of women needing to be rescued, things like that. Um, yes, that is a valid point. I agree, but at the same time, when what you have is an antagonist doing this stuff,
Right.
I think what you have is you're making a point about how there are terrible people in the world, and this is how you know that they're terrible. And even in this movie, Jeffrey says that, why are there people like Frank? Why do there have to be people like Frank in this world? Because he's just upset that horrible things are happening. And even when Jeffrey does bad to Dorothy Vallens, he's
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable with it. He's doing it
Right.
because she tells him to.
Right.
And so it's very... The bad things that happen to Dorothy Vallens are not things that we approve of, shall we say. So it's not like we're supposed to think, oh, this is the good thing. And I've had this discussion with comic books lately too. There was recently, a couple of years ago, there was a Joker cover that was, people got upset about
Oh, right,
being
right.
censored because the Joker looked like he was terrorizing... Who was it? It was Barbara Gordon, right?
Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was like a because of Killing Joke and whatnot. Yeah.
Right, and it's like this looks so threatening. Like he's going to do
Right.
something bad.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the
Yeah.
he's the Joker. He's supposed to do bad things. We're supposed to think he's a bad person. We're not supposed to think he's a good guy. And I don't necessarily think portraying bad things is advocating bad things.
Right.
So I feel like
But obviously, you understand that some people might feel that as exploitive.
I can see the point, but at the same time, I don't think the problem is David Lynch making a movie where Frank Booth is bad to people.
Right.
What I think is a problem is the fact that we don't have a lot of movies where women rescue men.
Right.
And so I feel like...
Well, and again, this was the 80s, not as a justification, but
it was the 80s, but when and yes, and like I said, maybe it's facile writing to make a rapist your antagonist, because that's who you're gonna hate them terribly. There's no way you can't hate a rapist.
Right.
And if you can't, then chances are I don't care for you as a person. But and even that is a gray area sometimes with people, like, where that's what makes an interesting character sometimes, where you have to think, oh yeah, that's right, but they do all these other good things. Oh my, and like the conflict in your brain about the complexity of humans is sometimes interesting and a worthwhile discussion. Whether or not that means I'm advocating rape is not the point. What I'm advocating is the concept of complexity when it comes to characterization.
Well, here's what I noticed is that it's not like Frank is put on any kind of pedestal in this movie.
Absolutely not.
He's not the hero, like you said.
No.
He's the villain. Everybody, like, Jeffrey's appalled by him. Sandy's appalled by him. Dorothy is afraid of him.
Dorothy's terrified of him.
And he hangs around. Frank's surrounded by his horrible cronies.
His horrible people.
So he's not portrayed in any likable light. And to put a point on it, he ends up paying the price for that. He is killed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He dies. It's not like, he triumphs here.
And
he pays the price as being the villain of the film. The hero wins. Dorothy is freed from her being terrorized by Frank.
Don's murdered, but she still has little Donnie.
Right, but little Donnie is freed from his captivity.
Right.
And they're reunited.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank pays the price as the bad guy.
Exactly. And while I think that Frank is a misogynist, I don't necessarily
Right.
think David Lynch is a misogynist for telling this story.
I see Frank as more of a sadist than a
Frank is
misogynist.
just an all-around horrible person, but
Yes. Yeah.
misogyny is in there. It's mixed in there, just with the derogatory names he calls her,
Yeah.
if anything else. But
That's just true.
um, but like I said, I don't necessarily think it is the responsibility of a white male artist to tell anybody else's story. I think it's the responsibility of white male Hollywood and producers to allow other people to tell their stories as well.
Right.
And
To level the playing field.
yes, I think that's where the situation is. And I think until the situation is a little bit more equal, until we're seeing more, Captain Marvel type characters,
Right.
we need to have that discussion about why aren't these here. But is it David Lynch's fault for telling the story he wants to tell? Or is it the fault of Hollywood for squelching anybody but white male storytellers?
Right.
And that's just my opinion on that.
No, I think you're perfectly entitled to that. I
So,
totally agree with you, actually, on that.
and considering David Lynch and just the way, just how he has, how he can do heroes and anti-heroes and all kinds of different things. I don't see him as a misogynist. Women aren't background, I think, in his stories.
Right.
And
They're brutalized, but they're tragic figures.
some of them are tragic figures, and then some of them are kind of heroic.
Right.
So, or they're anti-heroes, like Sailor and Lula.
Yes.
Total anti-heroes. So, I don't know. I think there's more to it, and like I said, I don't think not showing rape is the answer. I think we should continue to show rape as a bad thing. I want us to be uncomfortable when we see it. I want us to dislike the people who do it, and I want it to keep it in the conversation, because when we stop talking about something, we stop thinking about it, and we stop prioritizing the problem. So
right, you shouldn't be keeping uncomfortable subject matter in the shadows. You should be shining a light on it.
Shine a light on the unsavory parts of our culture.
Right.
So
and David Lynch is great at that.
David Lynch is great at that. And he shines and on some terrible, terrible, terrible things.
Right.
It's
like, well, his whole, especially with this film, Blue Velvet, everything isn't like sunny red, white, and blue Americana. There's a darkness in there, and that's what Lynch explores in this film.
And that's what Lynch explores in this movie. And you have torture, you have murder, you have kidnapping, you have rape, you have blackmail. Mm-hmm. I mean, Frank's doing it all.
Yep.
There's no redeeming.
He's a pretty well-rounded villain.
He's a well-rounded villain, yeah. But what's interesting about him is you're not rooting for him, but you are fascinated by him.
Right.
You're happy when he dies, but you were fascinated by him the whole time you were watching him. So there's that.
All right. Well, I thought that was a really interesting way for us to wrap up our discussion. Don't you?
I think so too. I think I definitely think that, like I said, there's a lot of crossover from the booklet and the interviews.
Yeah.
But they're both very interesting. The booklet is worth it to read. It's a very interesting read. Some great still photos in there.
All these things kind of present a very interesting picture of this film.
It does. And the deleted scenes, like we said before. Now, I will say, if you watch the deleted scenes, mm-hmm. you start to wonder a little bit about Jeffrey being a little bit of a sociopath, possibly, because of voyeurness and how he only stops something when it becomes necessary for him to stop it. For him, not for the girl who's having trouble.
Right.
In that, in the boiler room that inexplicably has a mattress in it.
But to be fair, that scene was cut.
That scene was cut. Yes, exactly. So, I think
it just kind of gives you more insight, but
I think
it's not the official version.
As a voyeur more than anything, and to set up how Jeffrey is sort of fascinated by the fact that there's terrible people in the world, even though he's horrified by it. I think he's a little bit fascinated by it.
Right. It makes him a little more redeemable.
Without it, he's definitely more redeemable for sure.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, or likable at least, I
Yep.
should say. All right. Now, I guess is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up, or
Well,
I don't want to just like cut and run.
I don't think you guys should listen to Charles. I think you should look at the color bars when you get this Blu-ray. You need to look at the color bars. You need to look
The
at the
test
test
chart
patterns.
you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yes.
You'll enjoy that. But
Well,
no, I think
I'm sure everybody is with you on not listening to me. So that's a given, right?
No, I'm just saying there's Criterion tradition, you got to keep up with
Okay.
it. But no,
All
I think we sort of hit the high points of a lot of those interviews, and a lot of the interviews
Right.
sort of go a little bit in more depth with a lot of the stuff that we saw in that behind the scenes.
And we didn't even talk about the Mysteries of Love documentary. So that could be like a whole different episode.
Yeah.
So you're on your own there, probably.
Right, that's the thing. So.
All right, but I think we covered enough. We devoted 2 episodes to this.
2 episodes in like 3.5 hours.
I know.
Right. That's the thing.
So
you're going to get your money's worth.
Exactly. What do you expect for free? So.
What do you want for nothing?
What do you want for nothing? Yeah, exactly. Rubber biscuit. Yes. Yep. All right. Now, before we sign off, we do have some email that I wanted to share.
My favorite.
So, new writer to Ghostwood, or at least maybe a new listener, hopefully.
Long-time listener, first-time writer.
All right. Mark Z. I'm going to call him Mark Z, even though he gave his last name in his email, at least in his email address.
Is it Zuckerberg? Is Zuckerberg listening to us?
No, it's not. It's not Zuckerberg.
All right.
But he writes in. He basically had a question about.
Actually, Charles, I think Zuckerberg is in fact listening to us right now.
This is true because we both have Facebook accounts.
That's right.
So
I think he's actually spying on us right now.
You're probably right about that. Okay, I stand corrected. So this Mark Z wrote to us initially, going, he goes, "Hi, the music," or he said he wanted to basically to know what our opening song was to our podcast.
Oh, that is all Charles.
Yeah, so basically it was something that I found on the interwebs called the Twin Peaks Laura Palmer Remix by an artist named J Stone, a.k.a. Viral Killer.
All right.
And I thought that was pretty cool, and ran it past Xan, and she seemed to like it. So he had a question about that, so I shared that with him. And then he wrote back. And he said, "Thank you much. I'm trying to leave you a 5-star review on iTunes.
Well,
so cheers for that." And he says, "I also like the personal stuff about you two and everything about your show."
Thank you
which
so
I thought was
much, Mark.
Really nice. Yeah, I appreciate that you like the way we kind of bring a little personal insight to what our ramblings.
Yeah, we try to bring in our own perspective and our own experiences.
Right. And it's just kind of the style I like to do is I like to share our lives with you at the same time. I know some people are just like, hey, get on with it. Talk about Twin Peaks or whatever.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
But yeah, we get there, and if you don't like it, there's always the fast forward button, right?
That's right. You can skip ahead every 15 seconds.
Exactly. So, but hopefully you like it. Hopefully you find it entertaining. Mark Z did. And then he says, here's to Twin Peaks Season 4, right? Yeah, let's go with that.
Heck yeah!
He goes, let's rock. So, yeah, so I'll do this one for Mark Z since he brought that up.
Yeah.
Let's rock.
There you go. You got that. Let's rock. All right. So, Mark, thank you very much for writing to us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for the 5-star review.
Yes, we really appreciate that.
Unsolicited, I might add. But thank you very much for doing that, and hope you keep enjoying the podcast. So thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll keep doing it. So.
Yeah, exactly. So
we're going to geek out over Twin Peaks, no matter what happens. So.
Well, here's my question now: what are we going to geek about next time? Because we've spent 2 episodes now talking about Blue Velvet. Guessing we should probably talk about something else. So, what do you want to talk about next time?
I want to start audio commentary on The Return.
Ooh. Okay.
That's what I'd like to do.
Now, do we want to do part 1 and part 2 back to back? like we did when we watched the pilot or that first part 1 and part 2 together, or do we want to do just part 1? You want to think that over?
Yeah, let's think that over, because I think we could
Okay.
probably
I
really
mean,
go
it'd
pretty
obviously be
long if we did
shorter
both
if we
together.
just did part 1,
Yeah.
but there was all that from, the flip side of that argument is that it just seemed to end so perfectly by tacking on part 2
Yeah.
the chromatics, the
Right.
shadow.
Right. Which is like the greatest song of the last,
Yeah.
5 years.
It's yeah, exactly. I love that song so much.
Yeah. That I
Like
was like, yeah, that's
this is
what
like it's like, okay, this is like Julie Cruz, The Next Generation.
oh, so good.
Yeah.
And I have bought so much chromatics and Johnny Jewel since then. Like that's all I've been buying. It's like, I'm sure Italians do it better. My home
Yes.
address by now, because
You're probably putting a new wing on somebody's house.
I'm just constantly buying whatever I can from them. So
Yeah. All right. So maybe we'll go ahead and do that then. So we'll figure out if we're going to do both part 1 and part 2, or we'll just do part 1. We'll figure that out. But at the very least, we're going to do part 1.
Yeah,
it
for
sounds
sure.
like. So we'll do that. So we're getting back to the Twin Peaks.
Well, this was just a sort of a topical.
Right.
Topical
Well, there's
side.
obviously more David Lynch films we could talk about. I know Jesse has asked if we're going to ever do Dune. And I said, well, I hope so, because I want to talk Dune. But maybe someday.
Come on, Criterion. So
Yeah, Criterion release would be nice. So
yeah. Oh,
get
when
on
does
that.
Lost Highway come out? Speaking of which, Shout Factory.
Well,
is it Shout Factory that's doing Lost Highway?
Yeah, and it's out.
Is it out? Okay.
It's out now. So yeah, if you want Lost Highway, I'm probably going to have to order it off Amazon because, hey, go figure, Target is not going to carry that. Or Walmart. So you're going to have to go to...
I don't think they're going to show up there very.
So I might have to order that off Amazon.
Yeah,
but,
I have a feeling that that's going to be a little more difficult.
Yeah, just saying. But so I guess we'll do that. We'll get back into the Twin Peaks, which I'm sure, hey, we're a Twin Peaks podcast, so yeah, let's do that. But we'll probably get to the other movies at some point down the road.
Yeah, we probably will
when we want to take a break, and we'll kind of fill that in. Plenty of things left to talk about. If you want to be like Mark Z and you want to reach us here at Ghostwood, please do. You can reach us at ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's ghostwoodpodcast@gmail.com. Please drop us a line like Mark did. Would love to hear from you. Or Twitter at Ghostwoodcast. Or Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast on Facebook.
Yep.
So yeah, please check that out. It's like Ghostwood here. It's like Ghostwood here. I love that. So always great to hear from Audrey. Otherwise, Xan, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Well, I am on the Instagram, I think. Hopefully Instagram's back up by the time we record this. And the Twitters, on my handle on both is Udanax19. I'm also Xan Sprouse on Facebook, but that's a little more... it's a little more pathetic over there. I would just stick with my photos and my tweets. They're more interesting.
Yeah, you got a pretty good like on Twitter not too long ago, didn't you? Like by a certain Simon Pegg, if I recall correctly.
That's not actually Simon Pegg.
Oh, it's not Simon Pegg?
Not really Simon Pegg.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was. I was just like, oh, that would have been awesome.
That would have been great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did give Kyle MacLachlan. Kyle MacLachlan recently did a picture of himself on a payphone.
Yeah.
And it says, "Cap, my picture, wrong answers only." So I did a couple of posts on that, and unfortunately I haven't gotten a response. But one of them was, I said, "You're on the phone with the Olympic Committee, trying to make sure that they know that there will never be an Olympics in Portland." So
nice. Little Portlandia reference.
Yeah,
nice.
Portlandia.
All right. Cool. So yeah, please check Xan out, and please follow her, and please give her all the likes in the world because she's awesome.
What about you, Charles?
As for me, of course.
Where can you get some likes?
Hopefully, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on the Insta. Also, Facebook, Charles Skaggs, Hilliard, Ohio, and Blog of Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Ghostwood, Twin Peaks, or David Lynch films, or all kinds of comic book sci-fi news. Hopefully I'm going to have my Spider-Man Far From Home review up soon.
Okay.
Get that done. But also news of my other podcast, including the Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse Jackson, where right now we're talking about Krypton, the sci-fi series based on, of course, the mythos of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Digging that and having a lot of fun talking that. Also, Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, where Jesse and I recently wrapped up Doom Patrol and kind of taking a little hiatus right now, but then we'll be back in October.
Nice.
As we talk Titans Season 2.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's going to have some very interesting new cast members in addition. And then also, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where obviously we talk Doctor Who and all kinds of Torchwood. Jesse and I recently we reviewed a Sarah Jane Adventures episode that featured David Tennant as the 10th Doctor.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, and we're going to be doing the Death of the Doctor, which featured Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, and also the return of Joe Grant, which was very cool. So we'll be talking about that in a month as well. But right now, next, coming up soon, we'll be talking Revelation of the Daleks with Colin Baker.
Oh.
And Perry. So we're going back to the 80s. So I love me some 80s Doctor Who.
Yeah, I just, I'm a heterosexual female, so I don't particularly like Perry all that much. So, yeah, people complained about Sarah Jane needing rescued all the time.
Yeah.
And then I feel like, what's his name just said, hold my beer.
Oh.
What's his name?
Okay.
Oh my God, I can't think of his name. They just refer to him as his initials, and I can't think of what they are.
I don't know.
Oh my God!
I'm glad I'm not the only one who has brain farts in this show.
I cannot think of his name. I'll have to text you at 3 a.m. when it comes to me.
Please do. I'd love that. It's like, I finally remembered it.
I finally know what this is.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah,
right.
I have a quick question for you, Charles.
Okay, quick question.
Who is ordering pizza under the name Torchwood?
Nice reference.
Oh, Torchwood was so good. I loved Torchwood.
Nice yeah. Oh, but John Barrowman is one of my... If you ever get the chance to go see John Barrowman at a convention, please do.
Or on stage, or buy his records.
He's just an amazing person, and he's so fun, and he just enjoys life so much.
He is full of positive energy.
And I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to meet him. Great person.
First person to ever ask me if I was named after the drug Xanax.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, all the love. I was talking about what was it? Trying to figure who. Never mind. I was thinking about something earlier and I totally forgot it. So I just had my own brain fart. So never mind.
Yeah, I can't think of what's his name, like the showrunner for Doctor Who in the 80s, and I can't think of his name.
Oh, with initials?
Yeah, with initials.
You mean John Nathan Turner?
J&T, yes, J&T.
J&T, yes. Yeah. Okay, there you go. All right, we figured it out.
Yes, we figured it out.
Right.
Yeah, J&T awesome. Is like, here, hold my beer. I'll show you somebody who's completely hapless. Here we go.
Okay, I get it now. Now I know who you're talking. As soon as you said showrunner in the 80s, I'm like, okay, it has to be Turner.
Yeah, it's Turner. I just could not think of it. I don't know what my problem was, but I couldn't think of it.
That's okay. That's all right. We got there. We got there.
We figured it out between the two of us.
All right. So maybe we'll probably talk a little Stranger Things next time. Hopefully I'll have it watched by then.
Charles,
I got to do my homework.
You should have it watched by later tonight.
I got to do it. And obviously
we're 2.5 hours left.
I know. And obviously we're going to talk
Twin Peaks. You're drinking tea. I think you're going to be fine.
So we'll talk a little Stranger Things probably, but we also will talk Twin Peaks: The Return. It's been a while since we talked about Twin Peaks: The Return, so I'm kind of looking forward to that.
I think,
always good for a rewatch.
The only TV show in the last decade that I've been as excited about, almost as excited about as The Return has been Stranger Things.
Yeah.
So I was. Because if The Return had been streaming, and had dropped at 3 a.m,
You would have watched the whole thing.
I would have taken the week off and watched the
Yeah.
entire thing.
I probably would have been right there with you, honestly. I would be like, okay,
You you would
I'd
have
like,
come over the house. We would have set up air mattresses in my living room, and we would just
I would
watch
have,
television.
I would have burned through all my, like, as many PTO days as it took.
Seriously, yeah, we were just taking a week
And
off of staycation. We would have just had one like week-long slumber party and watched 18 hours of TV as much as possible.
that would have been awesome.
That would have been so great.
And I probably would be divorced by now, but just
No,
saying.
Lori, I have 2 cats. Lori would be happy to come over and watch an episode or 2.
Oh, as long as you had, oh, okay, as long as you had she could play with your cats.
Yeah, Lori, I'm
She
not
would be
saying
happy.
Lori's not welcome. I'm just saying she probably wouldn't want to be subjected to 18 hours of Twin Peaks: The Return.
That's what I'm just saying. I was just like, I can't imagine Lori like being okay with that. She'd have to have something else.
She'd have to watch something else. Yeah, she's more than welcome.
Like-
She is by no
like-
means required.
But I would have to go, like, honey, Zan asked if I wanted to hang out and watch like 18 hours of Twin Peaks with her in a row. You want to do
And
what?
I really, really want to do so. See ya.
So, anyway.
You can come too.
All right.
You and
So-
Chris can watch something else.
We'll set up another TV for you guys, and we're going to watch this.
We've got a really comfortable chaise lounge in the studio. She could be down there with Chris. They could be watching something else, and we can be geeking out with the Twin Peaks.
Like we'll be in the Twin Peaks room. You guys will be in the other room. It'll be all good. All right.
Yeah, people can drop by whenever they have time.
So in case you're wondering what we're up to here in the Central Ohio area, that's what we're up to. All right. So, all right, everybody. I know we've been long-winded again, but
It's what we
all right.
do.
It's what we do. So, all right. So we're going to shut up now. Everybody, come on back. We're going to talk Twin Peaks: The Return, Part 1, and we get back to our commentaries because we haven't done that yet for Twin Peaks: The Return. So this should be a lot of fun. And we'll see you next time right here on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast. Bye, everybody.